When you receive a hard diagnosis with a likelihood of death, people are glad to tell you what to do. They do it with an intense certainty. Do this treatment, try this tool, be courageous, be strong. And they do it with the best of intentions and the most anecdotal of data. This worked for my uncle. I'm certain it will work for everyone. After all, what do researchers know? But many of us don't need more obligation. We've never been through this before, and what we really need are some areas to consider. We could use a working list for difficult diagnoses. Welcome to Finding Words in Hard Times, the podcast where we provide stories and tools to help you be more comfortable as you help others in hard times. I'm John Swanson, writer, researcher, and hospital chaplain. One of my friends asked me for this list when her dad was diagnosed with cancer, which has since taken his life. I was so grateful that she reached out because it gave me a chance to think through some things. So it's with humility that I'd like to suggest a list of areas you can consider in the midst of all the chaos and uncertainty in those moments of a difficult diagnosis. I will confess, I don't believe in jinxing. If you talk about something, that conversation won't make it happen, unless you do it in the presence of your phone, in which case Siri will make it happen. And I will confess, I do believe in God. Though I also believe that belief sometimes makes people more strident about what to do than they are helpful. So it's with humility that I'm suggesting some things to work on at your own pace and in your own situation when you've gotten a difficult diagnosis. First, work on the diagnosis and treatment. So ask for clarity about the diagnosis, ask for all the treatment options, ask for percentages and numbers. Is this a study of one person or is this a study of 5,000 people? Ask about side effects, particularly in light of what matters most to you. Will my body get better, but my brain get worse? Ask the questions of people who have done research and reflection. Ask about timelines. How soon do I have to make a decision about what kind of treatment to pursue? Ask about the implications of treatments in light of the promises that are made. So, for example, if we see commercials that say that this treatment has lengthened life, read the fine print to find out whether it has lengthened life by 2 weeks or it has lengthened life by 10 years. Those are factors that are incredibly helpful as we're thinking through diagnosis and treatment. It helps, though it's hard, to be more diligent than desperate. And it helps to build allies rather than adversaries in this process. So, work on the diagnosis and treatment, work on the support system. So, who is going to take care of the person who is ill? Who will take care of the caregivers? Who will take care of those taking care? So all this includes shoveling and mowing and rides, but it also talks about emotional care, and being willing to ask for help early can mean that your emotional and physical and financial resources last a little bit longer. Now, just a comment about locations. Lots of us want to stay at home as long as we can, but what complicates care at home sometimes is it means that a family member needs to be family member and caregiver at the same time, and that can be difficult. On the other hand, there are people who can't afford care outside the home. So think about asking those kinds of questions and looking at those kinds of insurance and support at home, at-home caregivers, in facilities, in other locations. So have serious and honest conversations about the support system. Third, work on the living. I'm often involved in conversations with people planning for difficult times, and I often ask, what's a good day? Knowing the answer to that question and then working to have as many of those good days as possible is life-giving. This probably includes learning to not make the diagnosis the middle of every conversation and not making the diagnosis the identity of the person. It also includes not excluding the diagnosis from every conversation. It also includes having pointless conversations about the things that we love. It is okay in the middle of a difficult diagnosis to talk about baseball scores. It's okay to talk about um, stories of our past, of things that we loved. It's okay to keep building those kinds of news stories. So be willing to spend time on living. This also may be a good time for conversation about faith questions that a person may themselves be asking, not to talk about things in a sense of desperation. Say, what are the things that you're wondering about? What are the things that you want to know about? All right. Next, work on details. So if you've been meaning to get around to insurance, meaning to get around to password lists, meaning to get around to paperwork, now is a good time to do that. Finishing what needs to be finished, getting rid of what doesn't need to be finished is always a healthy thing to do. If there are projects that you're not going to be able to get to, um, uh, getting those off from other people's plates too ends up being a helpful thing. Establishing power of attorney, healthcare, representatives, insurance, and retirement fund beneficiaries are all part of the details. And taking care of those doesn't mean that death will come sooner. It may mean that it brings more peace and thereby creates less stress, which has effects on the body. So, working on these details can be a health giving, life giving project for everybody around. Next, work on remembering. You know how you always wanted to drink coffee and talk with someone about what they learned while growing up? Now is the perfect time to make time. Tell stories, label pictures, find out about the weird uncle that no one ever talked about. Uh, we are at a time in our lives where we can't talk to our parents anymore and find out what did that mean? Where did that story come from? Who were those people? Can you remember what happened in that situation? So it can be fun and interesting and clarifying and relaxing and restorative to have those conversations while you can have those conversations. Next, work on the dying. For many of us, at some point, someone will have to make healthcare decisions for us. So, what do we want to be true about decisions in treatment in the short term and in the long term? This can include specific interventions like a ventilator, other treatments like chemo, still other contexts like hospice. Informed conversations about these hard topics are helpful. I'll put a link below to a group called the Conversation Project, which has materials that you can use on your own to have these kinds of conversations. And I'll say this, if there are some of these things that you want more information about, um, you can email me, you can leave a comment. You can see in the background here, jon.swanson@socialmediachaplain.com. Sometimes it helps to have somebody that you can ask specific questions about. For example, like the source of doing this episode. Now, all of this stuff isn't just for sick people. You don't have to wait for a diagnosis to get paperwork in order. You don't have to wait till for a diagnosis to make plans, to have conversations, to go out for coffee. True confession, in the last couple of years, I've been working on most of these things. Nancy and I did some traveling a year or so ago, and so I had to be taking care of some paperwork in advance of that. I'm trying to attend to people, not because there's a diagnosis other than being human, I think that I'm healthy. But after watching the chaos before and after expected and unexpected deaths for the last 8 years and for several hundred families, I want to remove as much uncertainty as I possibly can for my loved ones. So, work on the treatment and diagnosis, work on the support system, work on the living, work on the details, work on the remembering, work on the dying, and do this as soon as you want to do it, as soon as you can do it. Now, a helpful book for some of these topics is called 101 Ways to Find Meaning in Suffering. One of my friends, Patrick Reiki, looks at things to say and to do while walking through these kinds of tough situations. But the time to look at his book is early in a terminal process, not late. And what I've discovered is too often people wait too long to have the conversations that would be helpful for quality and quantity of life. All right, thanks for joining us for this episode of Finding Words in Hard Times, the podcast. Trying to provide you with stories and tools to help you be more comfortable as you help people in hard times. So subscribe to this newsletter at thisishard.substack.com. And check the show notes for links and resources. This podcast is always available both on Apple Podcasts and Spotify in the audio form and in video on YouTube. And always just search for Finding Words in Hard Times, the podcast, in all of those places. And thank you for spending this time because you want to be to be a helper. I'm grateful for the time and attention that you give to this. Thanks so much. See you next week.